Hello, Bobby, aka Anarcha Media here, and in this video, I would like to talk about um just sort of the general state of social media and the the world and YouTube right now, which, needless to say, is rather fucking bleak. I don't think this is going to really surprise anyone who's really paying attention. Like, since the Clinton era, and even in the Clinton era a little bit, really, like, things have, really been going to shit in the US. I mean, let's be honest, things have always been shit in the US, but it hasn't really been obvious to cishet white folks until, like, the last 20 or so years. I mean, obviously, pretty much everybody else has been well aware of that, since forever, like, especially African Americans and Indigenous Americans, and more recently, Mexican Americans, who have been increasingly shit on by certain less than reputable politicians, shall we say. But of course, that's nothing new. Like, politics has always, to some extent or another, fed on the darkest impulses of mankind towards irrationality, fear of the other, prejudice, alienation, much like religion. The whole, like, bigger dick God theory that George Carlin talked about. And by the way, like, that is just as true now as it was when he did that sketch, which, when you really think about it, is so fucking depressing. Like, the absolute inanity and insipid nature of our politicians. But when you consider the nature of politics, this is entirely unsurprising. And when you consider the fact, like politicians constantly pretend to give a shit about the people, but even then, like, if you are really paying attention, like, that pretense is paper thin because they know most people are stupid and they know they don't have to work that hard to get people worked up against each other. It's sad, but it's fucking true, isn't it? Like, and like, um, and like um, the thing is, like, I often don't get much attention as a BreadTuber, and yeah, I use that term very reluctantly, um, because, quite frankly, a lot of the BreadTube community, if it can even be called that, is shit, you know? And I'm not just saying that because they're not perfect leftists, because none of us are really, but, like, how can I put this? Like, so many, breadtubers, like, they progress beyond liberalism to leftism, and they think they're done, right? They think that they don't really have to think beyond that, right? And they think they don't have to actually bother with theory, which I get it. Like dealing with theory and praxis, on a constant basis, nobody really wants to do that, I I personally, like I haven't read every, like, book on leftist theory ever, but I've read the bare bones basics. Like, I've read What is Property, I've read the Communist Manifesto, I've read Das Kapital. Hell, I've even read some reactionary books just for the purpose of knowing my enemies, as well as um, um, as well as just generally being curious about such things in general, because politics is shit, but it affects all of us as human beings, which is unfortunate, and it affects the world we live in, which again is unfortunate, because most politicians are stupid, and most politicians are shit, and most politicians are liars, and everybody knows it. Even the people who support these politicians, deep down, really, they know it. But they don't see any alternatives. And that's one of the main reasons that BreadTube exists, to show people alternatives. And I think a lot of fucking BreadTubers, quite frankly, are failing in that task very badly, as our current president. It still depresses me to call that man that with a straight face. But yeah, like, would say, like, it, like, like, I've been in And this is probably gonna come off as a wee bit of a ramble, but it is kind of cogent to like sort of problems I see with BreadTube right now. Like the like as someone who's been in both the anti SJW and SJW communities, like the loudest voices on both sides are shit, and the loudest voices on both sides are very self-destructive, very hypocritical, very toxic. Like, like I'm, and I'm gonna parse this a little bit, okay? Um, Feminism is not a bad thing. In fact, feminism is a necessity. Intersectionalism is also a necessity. The problem a lot of people, I think, have with intersectionalism is I think they kind of tend to make this assumption that intersectionalism is the same as equivocation, and a lot of liberal intersectionalists do make a lot of false equivocation fallacies, but that's because of the liberal part, not because of the intersectionalist part. Again, liberalism is a conviction killer. Liberalism is a principle killer. Anything liberalism touches, it turns to shit. Because liberalism doesn't actually have any convictions or principles of its own. Because liberalism and conservatism really aren't that different. They both are basically different, like, versions of let's keep everything basically the same, maybe tweak a few things here and there, but don't rock the boat too much. And that's horseshit, because sometimes you need to rock the boat, especially when our planet is on the line, like it is right now, like it has been for the last over 20 fucking years. And no, like, I'm not at all afraid of being called a climate alarmist, because it's the fucking truth. And if you don't like it, well, get the fuck out of the kitchen, right? Which, won't be an option in the next 30 years or so, most likely, because things are going to get a lot hotter worldwide. From here on out, like they have been doing, and like they will continue to do. But of course, the conservatives and the liberals alike will just drag their feet, and the conservatives will pander to big oil, and the liberals will will pretend debating them on facts is gonna change their minds. Of course not. Because they're fucking paid to not change their minds. They already know the facts. Conservatives already fucking know the facts, liberals. They're deliberately fucking lying because they're paid to by big oil. Because they're paid to by big pharma to talk shit, basically. And I think that deep down, a lot of you know this shit, but you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to act. You want the moral brownie points of claiming to be on the left, but you don't want the actual thinking, the actual legwork, the actual hard labor required to be an actual leftist or an actual radical. And you know, the reason they call us radicals, well, the definition of the word radical is getting to the bottom of something. In this case, getting to the bottom of why is capitalism so shitty? Why is our world dying? Why are politicians acting stupid? That's what so-called BreadTube is here to do. And quite frankly, a lot of BreadTubers, I'm not going to name any names, are failing to do that quite badly. This has been Bobby, aka Anarchomedia. Liberty, equality, fraternity, goodbye.